Hello and welcome to the CSS Grid course. My name is Indro and I will be your instructor for this course. In this video and in the upcoming videos, we will learn all about the CSS Grid. So let's get started. So first thing first, what exactly is CSS Grid? Okay. So the CSS Grid layout module makes browsers display the selected HTML elements as grid box models. Grid allows you to easily resize and reposition a grid container and its items two-dimensionally. Okay, so what do I mean by two-dimensionally? So two-dimensionally means grid modules allow simultaneous laying out of box models in rows and columns. Okay, so if you want to lay out boxes in your HTML page, in your website, in rows and columns simultaneously, then you use the CSS grid. If you do not need to lay out the box models in rows and columns simultaneously, or if you just want to resize or reposition elements one-dimensionally, that means inside of a row or a column, then you use the CSS Flexbox. Okay, so let's go to MDN as well and let's see about the CSS Grid layout. So the CSS Grid layout module excels at dividing a page into major regions or defining the relationship in terms of size, position, and layering between parts of a control built from HTML primitives. Like tables, grid layout enables an author to align elements into columns and rows. However, many more layouts are either possible or easier with CSS Grid than they are with tables. Okay? For example, a grid container's child element could position themselves so they actually overlap and layer similar to CSS positioned elements as well. So we can use the CSS grid as an alternative to the CSS positioning as well. Okay, so let's see some examples of the CSS grid in action, and after that we will discuss about the terms such as the grid container and the child elements or the grid item elements. Okay, so I am inside of the unsplash.com. Here you can find some free stock images as well. So here, as you can see, this particular layout, this is totally responsive, by the way. If I just open up the DevTools as well. So this is totally responsive. And this particular layout is made possible by using the CSS grid. And you might be thinking like, hey, how I know that? So I have opened the DevTools and inside of the layout, okay, inside of this layout tab, as you can see, we have the grid overlays. Okay, and there are a bunch of overlays going on. This website uses the CSS grid quite heavily. Okay, then we have the New York Times page. As you can see, this website is also using the CSS grid quite heavily. Okay, as you can see, this is a pretty complex layout for a website, and this layout is handled properly by using the CSS grid. Okay, so these are some of the examples where the CSS grid is used. And also one of the other resource which I have found is by FreeCodeCamp. It is the CSS grid handbook. Okay, so you can just search online and I will add this blog post in the description below as well. Okay, all right, so here we have seen some of the examples of the CSS grid in action as well. So now let's go here and go to Excalidraw and see about the grid containers and the grid items. Okay, so as you can see, this is quite similar with the flex container and the flex items. So basically this blue box which we are currently having right now, this is the grid container. So how we can turn a container like a normal container to a grid container? So we have to set the display to grid or inline grid, and we will see the differences in the code in the upcoming videos. Okay, so we can just set for this container the display set to grid or inline grid, then this container will become a grid container. Okay, and all of the direct children which this container has are the grid items. Okay, so all of the direct childrens, as you can see, so the green boxes here are the grid items. Okay, so this is how the grid container and grid items works, and in the next video we will see the display grid into action.